Hi, this is David. We are once again talking about Java Spring Boot applications, and I'm going to cover the same application I've been building over the past few videos. Recall that there is a method in here. It's a web service, and if you send an HTTP GET to a certain URL, then it'll add up these two numbers in the query string. This app is running right now, so if I hit that now with the numbers 1/2, then it will magically return 3. Awesome. Let's extend that a little bit, and instead of just using a get, let's do a post. And with a post, instead of passing it those values in the query string, we'll actually pass them in the body as JSON. So to do that, what I want to do is, first of all, I'm going to create a couple of models in here. So I'll go into my models, and I'll create one model for the expected JSON input and one model for the expected JSON output, which I've done in the past. In fact, if you want to know about posting, video number 83 shows how to do HTTP posts with Java Spring Boot. Go ahead and watch that one. But for now, so you won't have to watch me type, I'm just going to create these two model classes. Add numbers input and add numbers output. Let me do that. New file, add numbers input.java. It's a class, and the code is right there. And then add numbers output.java, and that code is here. And you'll notice that for the input, I have a property called first number, a property called second number, and a property called person name. I've decided that I want to actually send a message back that says person, who it is. And here's the output here. That is a property called sum. That's the sum of the two numbers together, and then some message. And so in that message, I'll either output a friendly string saying what the sum is and maybe including the person's name in it, or I'll put an error message in there. It's a great place for that. And I've got a couple of constructors here. The one that I'm really going to use is this one here, where I can pass in the sum and the message, and therefore I can create and set these properties just in a single line of code, just for convenience sake. All right, now I want to create a controller method that's similar to this one, the add numbers, but which really it's got some logging in here. And it does some stuff with the request and the response headers. But really, the meat of it is right there. I want to call that method right here. So I'm going to create a similar method, a post method here. And it will add numbers together, but it'll do so by accepting a post with some JSON in the body as an input. The signature of that method, it's right here. Here, and you can see that first of all it's going to return the same thing as I did up here, a response entity, but instead of returning just an integer, it's going to return add numbers output. I'll do control dot here and import that, and then the response, the request is going to expect to receive add numbers input. That's that model I just created right here. The variable is also called add numbers input, or lowercase a, and then this indicates that I should find that in the request body. And that squiggly line just tells me that I haven't returned anything here. So if I just say return null, I should get rid of that squiggly line. But really what I want to do is I want to run this line of code right here and return that. And I get the first number and the second number from this input right here, add numbers input. That's the model I just created. Add numbers input right here. It's got a first number property and it's got a second number property. So that's what I'll do. I'll say integer first number equals add numbers input dot get first number, and integer second number equals add numbers input dot get second number, and then I want to get that other property, which is a string, person name equals add numbers input dot get person name right here. Now I've got that. Now I can call this because I've got the first number and second number, and I want to return an output. So I want to create this object, this add numbers output object. So that's what I'll do. I'll say add numbers output. The variable name will be add numbers output equals new add numbers output. And I've got a constructor here. Let's make sure add numbers output. My constructor will accept the sum and a message. So I haven't created that message yet. Let's do this. String message equals the sum is plus the sum plus comma plus person name. How about that? So if I spelled everything correctly, put a semicolon there, then this should be right here, and I can just return that. So when I return this, just like here, I want to create a response entity, but it's not going to be of an integer. It's going to be of type add numbers output. That's what my signature is expecting here. A response entity of add numbers output, and it won't be the sum. It'll be this variable that I created on the line above. Right here, I don't really care for this video. I don't really care about the header, so I'll use this overload of response entity right here. All right, so right there, hopefully I've created everything correctly. Let me set a breakpoint here and then run this again. I'm in debug mode, so should do that. And now what I want to do is not call this get, but I'm going to call it as a post. So I said that it wants to be the method, the path will be add numbers, just like before, add numbers. And in the body, I want an object that looks like this add numbers input right here. Add numbers input with a first number, a second number, and a person name. That's what I've got here. First number is 1, second number is 5, person name is David. Let me send that as a post. And here it is. So I called it correctly, and let me step through this, just make sure everything works. Step, 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 and I get the first number is 1, second number is 5, person name is David. And that is working here. Now I can call this add numbers. I feel pretty confident that'll work, but I'll step into it anyway and just do some logging. Get the sum, which should be 5 plus 1, yes, 6. Return that. And now we've got a sum of 6. And then now I want to create a friendly message here. The sum is 6, David. Great. And then I'm going to return a response. And just wrap that up in a response entity with a message and an HTTP 200, which is what OK is. So run that. And I get back an HTTP 200. I get back this JSON that looks like my add inputs output model. And the sum is 6. And the message is the sum is 6, David. Everything looks great. But what happens if I have an error? What if I, for example, omit one of these arguments here? Looks like I'm in the middle of debugging here. Let me resume that. And send it again. And I set this breakpoint here. And now you can see that I've omitted the argument. That's a problem because this second number is now null. And when I try to call add numbers in here, then when it gets to this line right here, it's going to try to add 1 to null, and that will throw an exception right there. And it'll throw it, and it's not really handled very well. I mean, the Spring Framework handles it. That's fine, but what I get back is not useful. I get a 500 back. It just says internal server error. I'd like to trap for that. I'd like to catch that. Problems like missing parameters would be a really nice thing to have. and I could return a more useful error message here. So let's do that. Then go back into here, and in my controller, I'm just going to catch for these things. I'm going to say if first number equals null, or second number equals null, or person name equals null. If any of those things are empty, then I want something like this, but I want an error message. So here I'm going to say the message is not going to be a friendly thing like this. It'll be missing input. Required properties are first number, second number, and person name. That's really useful. I won't even bother to call this right here. Instead, I'll just instantiate a. Yeah, that's right. Instead of doing this, instead of sum, I'll say null right here. So I'm not going to bother to call the add numbers at that point. I won't bother to do this. I'm just going to return right away. And I won't return an HTTP status OK at 200. I'll return something different. So I'm just going to do bad request. You may want to look and see what's a more appropriate one, depending on what your errors are. Let's restart that and see if we actually get a bad request is a 400. We should still get the output, some JSON output, but we'll get a 400, and the output will have a null for the sum, and it'll have a message like this in its message property. So I'll remove that breakpoint here and send it. And what I get is a 400 bad request back, and I still get this add numbers output, but the sum, instead of being a number, I get a null here, and I get a useful message here. And I may even want to break this up into 3 different if statements to check to see first number, second number, third number, or I'm sorry, person name, and modify that error message specifically to say this is the specific. Like if let's just say accept it because we, and so we want to make sure that Bob is illegal. So we can never bothering even to get to the add numbers thing here. Just say if it's Bob, and that's fine. And then the rest of this remains the same. I'll return the null. The message will be Bob is not welcome here. And then I'll take this output from this line, that'll be in the body, and return a 400 as well. And what's wrong with that? Mismatch. Convert int to Boolean. Person name dot compare to, and it's person name. Person name is string. Put person name is a string. Doesn't return a Boolean, it returns a number. If these two are the same, then it'll return a 0, and if they're a non-zero. That's what I want to do. If compare to Bob, that's how we do string in Java. All right. or with want it to be equal to 0. So if they're equivalent, they should. So Bob is the one that's not welcome here. So I'll run this. This should be good. I should get a 200 back. And I do 200 is 4. 1 plus 3. The sum is 4. David is my message. But try to get sneaky, and that rascal Bob to my rules. Now this is of course a really simple example, kind of contrived, just adding two numbers together. In all likelihood, you are going to have some much more complex web services. They're going to call some services that do some relatively complex workflows, or maybe call some back-end services, read from and write to databases, and therefore your business rules will be a lot more complex than just determining whether or not Bob is the type of input. And I'll cover some more complex examples in a future video. But for now, what I've done is I've shown you a simple way to handle errors in a web service that's created with a Java Spring Boot framework and return output, including the HTTP status, appropriately. This is David. Thank you for watching.